So welcome back to the class. Let us begin another session on Weber. And in this class, we are looking at a very important analysis of Weber on modern capitalism. And we know that capitalism is a unique economic system that is characteristic of the modern era. And this particular economic system has been subjected to a lot of scholarly analysis, not only from economists but also from other social scientists. And we did spend a lot of time trying to understand a Marxian analysis as well as critique of capitalism. And here, as a sociologist, Weber also is extremely interested in understanding capitalism, but he's unlike Karl Marx. He's not trying to understand the economic logic or the questions of exploitation associated with capitalism, but he's trying to understand the connection between capitalism and rationalism or rationalization. And this takes you back to a theme that I have repeatedly mentioned in the previous classes, that the central concern of Max Weber is the question of rationalization. So we discussed in the previous classes his analysis about rationalization and social action and rationalization and authority. And in this class, we are trying to understand how Weber puts forward an argument about how there is an intricately close relationship between rationalization and this capitalist mode of economy. So let us see how he proceeds in that. So for Weber, capitalism is a consequence of extensive rationalization in Europe. The modern world is a capitalist world, but more fundamentally, it is the product of a multifarious and far-reaching process of rationalization. So for Weber, the entry point into the analysis of capitalism is his theory of rationalization. And we discussed that in a very controversial manner, he argued that while different forms of rationality exist in other civilizations, a unique kind of rationality is something quite exclusive to that of Europe, and where you calculate everything and you extensively use specialized knowledge and science and technological facilities. So that kind of a rationality, Weber argues, is quite unique to Europe, and that also even in Europe as well, that did not exist before the time of modernity. So Weber is connecting his argument of that rationalization with the emergence of this new economic system called as capitalism. So this extensive rationalization in Europe, the modern world is a capitalist world, but more fundamentally, it is a product of a multifarious and far-reaching process of rationalization. By referring to capitalism as rational, Weber does not mean to imply moral approval. His usage is intended to be descriptive, not evaluative. And this is, I think, by now you are rather clear about it when he talks about what is a value neutral, value free analysis of capitalism, because Weber is not taking any position, unlike Marx, who was extremely critical of capitalism. Okay? Weber is not getting into the argument of whether capitalism is good or it is bad, whether it is exploitative of workers or whether it should collapse or something else should take its place. Weber is not getting into such kind of debates. Rather, he is trying to maintain the status of a neutral observer, okay, who is capable of analyzing things objectively, trying to describe things as they appear, without allowing their own subjective values to influence their findings or their descriptions. So his usage is intended to be descriptive and not evaluative. Or in other words, he is trying to be positive rather than normative, a point that we discussed in the previous class. So modern capitalism is rational in the formal sense. And here again, I hope you remember, Weber makes this distinction between substantive rationalism and formal rationalism. This is Weber's key point. To the extent that business operations are conducted according to systematic planning based on economic calculation and monetary accounting. So this new capitalism, according to Weber, does not have anything much to offer in terms of certain lofty ideals or values. Rather, it is more preoccupied with a kind of a formal form of rationality. It is these business operations are conducted according to systematic planning based on economic calculation and monetary accounting. So extremely rational instrumental mechanisms are brought in to conduct the business in the era of capitalism. Okay, so where it is devoid of all other calculations. If you remember his typology of actions, where emotions are kept away, traditions are kept away, ideals, certain values systems are kept away. So here Weber argues that in modern capitalism is executed, or it is carried out in an extremely extremely rational manner, based on economic calculation and monetary accounting. So Weber argues that the capitalist enterprises as profit-seeking organizations are formally rational insofar as their managing decisions are consistently guided by the impersonal and quantitative assessment of cost and revenues. So here it's a very, the people who engage in that, they are not swayed or they are not influenced by any other considerations, okay? No personal commitments or no value orientations, no emotional issues are allowed to mark or allowed to influence their economic calculations. Economic calculations are carried out purely on the basis of cost and revenues. Okay, so it's a very cold, calculative, instrumental way of getting things done. Okay, in a very precise, in a clinical manner, you carry on with your economic activities only with the purpose of increasing your profit and then making more money. So they are formally rational as their managing decisions are consistently guided by impersonal and quantitative assessments of cost and revenues. While capitalism is neither new nor Western, according to Weber, what he calls rational capitalism is both uniquely modern and uniquely Western. So he makes the argument that the capitalism as a form of economic activity is not something quite new, or it's not something quite unique to Western idea. You have different types of capitalism exist in different part of the world, but this rational capitalism, as he explains, is uniquely modern and it is uniquely Western. Again, he is connecting, he is highlighting this unique character of Europe, the way he talked about the rationality. He understands these rationalization as a unique epoch, as a unique example of that of the Europe. So earlier forms of capitalism, Weber observes, have an irrational and speculative character, with profits derived less from ongoing market operations than from opportunistic investments and the forcible acquisition of booty. So he is talking about major trades and explorations and other expeditions carried out by trading communities in Europe and in other places, and he says that while these activities also aimed at amassing more wealth, increasing more profit, that this whole colonial expansion starting from the 15th century was aimed at creating more and more wealth. Every trade expeditions, even before the colonial expansion, from every country had this inherent idea of creating more wealth. But Weber argues that they were irrational in this modern sense, okay? Not that they were completely meaningless, not in that sense. They were irrational and speculative in character, and where profits derived less from ongoing market operations than from the opportunistic investment and the forcible acquisition of booty. Many times that even during colonial trade, this plundering was a major way of acquiring more and more wealth. The trading vessels were plundered, trading vessels were attacked and the booty was taken. So that kind of an argument, that kind of an activity was some of the central features of those kind of capitalism, if you were to call like that, according to Weber. And that happened in the absence of an ongoing market operation, or it was less from the ongoing market operations, whereas in the modern era, this market assumes a central figure. So then he comes to the question of modern capitalism. So modern rational capitalism cannot be equated with the acquisitive drive or the unlimited greed for gain or the pursuit of selfish interest by making of money. So he says that this modern rational capitalism, as you see in contemporary world or at the time of Weber, it is qualitatively different in terms of its operation, and it is also qualitatively different in terms of its intent or its purpose. So he says that it cannot be equated with the acquisitive drive of the earlier period, where you want to create wealth without any boundary, or the unlimited greed for gain, personal greed, or the pursuit of selfish interest by making of money. So he says that if now capitalist expansion is taking place, it cannot be reduced to the individual greed. Of course, in the motivation to create more wealth is of course there, but that is something qualitatively different from the earlier ways in which people want to amass more wealth for their personal gratification. So modern capitalism, tempered by the business-like pursuit of profit, is if anything characterized by a more restrained acquisitive impulse than the compulsive, irrational, unbridled lust for rich commonly found prior to and outside the modern capitalist world. So this is again re-emphasizing the argument that this modern capitalism, which is tempered by business-like pursuits of profit, if it is anything characterized by more than restrained acquisitive impulse than the compulsive, he uses all these terms to characterize the pre-modern capitalism that was characteristic of the Middle Ages or even before that. Now, in contrast, according to Weber, modern capitalism is an economic system where the provision of human needs is satisfied through the continuous operation of privately owned and profit-minded business firms. So here he brings in the central role of business firms as the primary institution, and also the kind of needs is satisfied through the continuous operation of privately owned and profit-minded business firms. So what are the kind of changes that take place when you bring in this role of business firms? These capitalist enterprises are distinguished by their reliance on a legally free labor force, their resolute orientation towards market opportunities, and a mode of operation governed by monetary calculation. Extremely important points. So we know that we had some discussion about how there was a transition from feudal era to that of capitalist era, where we discussed a number of important factors, especially about the emergence of free labor, emergence of market, emergence of institutionalized laws and regulations, so that the people who enter into the business activity, they have some amount of certainty, some amount of guarantee about the existing laws, taxes and other things. So he is reiterating the kind of a similar points. So these capitalist enterprises are distinguished by their reliance on a legally free labor. We discussed, I hope you remember, we discussed extensively on this, because during the period of slavery as well as during the period of feudalism, the labor were not free. Okay, they were not free because they were, during the period of slavery, they were completely owned by the masters, and during the feudal period they were attached, they were kind of permanently attached with their kind of land. So they were not free moving, they were not able to sell their labor as per their wishes. So there is a legally free labor force, their resolute orientation towards market opportunities. Okay, it's not on the basis of the whims and fancies of a trader or of a particular master or a feudal lord, but there is an established market system and a mode of operation governed by monetary calculation. So here the money assumes significant presence, currency assumes significant presence. It's not the kind of an old systems of barter or exchange and other things. Now, what distinguishes modern economic system, accordingly, Weber asserts, is the rational pursuit of profit and forever renewed profit by means of rigorous calculation directed with foresight and caution towards long-run economic success. So here he is bringing that point of modern rationality to the fore. So he argues that there is a rational pursuit of profit. Okay, Again, profit making continues to be the main objective, but this profit making is not realized either through plunder or pillage or through exchange or excavations or other thing, expeditions, but rather it is through a rational pursuit of profit, and it's a forever renewed profit by means of a rigorous calculation directed with foresight and caution toward long-run economic success. So, what is the long-run economic success of this activity is very thoroughly analyzed, and everything is taken into account. Enough caution is used, and only after such kind of exercises, Weber argues, a modern capitalism emerges. So, there were several major preconditions for the emergence of capitalism according to Weber, because why capitalism did not emerge in Europe before the era of modernity, or why capitalism according to Weber did not emerge in other parts of the world before modernity. Weber has very specific answers. So he lists out a series of reasons, and the first one is private ownership. Modern capitalism presupposes private ownership of the means of production with entrepreneurs firmly in charge. Ownership gives capitalists on their representatives the authority to manage the production process, direct the labor force, and make investment decisions, all guided by monetary calculations and oriented towards goal of profit maximization. So this Weber is very certain that private ownership, that individuals are allowed to own property, and this property could be land, or this property could be factory or other means of production. This played a fundamental role in motivating groups of people to increase and amass more and more wealth. And he's certain that this would not have happened if a system similar to communism or socialism existed, where there is no private ownership, and if it were completely owned by the community or a collective kind of ownership. So ownership gives capitalists or their representatives the authority to manage the production process. We know how a class of managers emerged of late, who were specialized only in micromanaging as well as providing a larger managerial directions to the process of production, and direct the labor force and make investment decisions, very prudent investment decisions, all guided by monetary calculations and oriented towards goal of profit maximization. Second one is free labor, which we already discussed. The rationality of modern capitalism also presupposes a labor force that is legally free but compelled by the whip of hunger to offer its services on the labor market. I want you to recollect Karl Marx here. Okay, his arguments about this reserve army of labor, and how and why that the capitalists are able to exploit the workers, and how that there are recessions and then there are upward growth and recessions, and how there are cycles of business. I want you to remember that. So there is a legally free labor force who are in theory can sell their labor to the highest bidder, but that in as Marx very elaborately argued, in most of the scenario throughout the historical episodes, what you see is that there is a glut, there is an always already existing reserve army of laborers who are forced to sell their labor even when the payment or the salary is very inadequate. Or there are, according to Marxian argument, the capitalist or the bourgeoisies, they will find ways to reduce the wages compared to what they really deserve. Compelled by the whip of hunger, this is a very important term, by the whip of hunger to offer its services on the labor market. Free labor, where workers can be hired, deployed and fired at will, is an important precondition for the capitalist rationality for two reasons. First, where workers sell their labor on the market for a wage, employers can reliably estimate the cost of production in advance. Second, free labor along with private control over the means of production facilitates workplace discipline. Very important things, because you can appoint workers, you can train them, you can fire them at will, and how much is the average salary, how much is the total salary. You can project if you want to expand, you can project if you want to contract business. So this provided quite a lot of flexibility to the capitalists according to Weber. Then the third one according to Weber is the free market. The efficient operation of the capitalist business enterprise and the reliable determination of expected profits are possible only with the elimination of all market restrictions and other irrational limitations of trading. This requires that market transactions be purely impersonal, free from the influence of any sentimental, religious or ethical infringements. Again, a very controversial theme. You know, this whole Adam Smith's argument about free market, the invisible hand. Now, whether is there an invisible hand available, or is the free market is free in that sense, or is that free market is something good for the humanity? All these are entirely different set of debates. But what Weber is arguing that in the absence of a free market, a market which runs only on the basis of its own rationalities, a market that is unhindered by excessive political, religious or personal influences, is something so paramount for the emergence of modern rational capitalism. Then the fourth one is capital accounting. A rational capitalist enterprise, Weber states, is one that determines the merit of investment opportunities by means of modern bookkeeping methods, the modern accounting, Weber argues, where you have standardized procedures for entering into the income, the expenditure, the other components. So this modern bookkeeping or accounting provides a kind of an institutionalized mechanism to track, to keep track of your way of conducting business. And then finally, technology, finally. And yet another point is technology and mechanization, which is another very important point. Modern capitalism presupposes rational technology and the mechanization of production and distribution. Technology enhances efficiency, but more importantly for Weber, because it permits accurate estimation of output, it facilitates rational accounting and precise calculation. Here again, Weber brings this role of technology, and not only for increasing efficiency, but also it adds to, or it contributes to your predictability. Technology can very clearly give you an idea about what is the kind of output. What is the output, how much raw materials is required, how much time is required, what would be the output of a given particular period in time. So this factor, Weber argues, is something extremely important. Another point Weber argues is this calculable legal and administrative system. Modern capitalism presupposes calculable laws and dependable legal and political environment. Extremely important. You can't think of capitalism to survive, or any economic activity to survive in a place where there is no law and order. The economy will simply crumble in such kind of places. So, or in order for a free market to thrive, Weber argues that you need to have a calculable legal and administrative system. Of course, there could be changes, new laws and new taxes can be imposed, but then they are all within the kind of an expected limits. These are not decided on the basis of the whims and fancies of a particular ruler who can act at will. Okay, the systems are more well entrenched. There are laws, both national as well as international laws. There are various conventions and various protocols, various treaties that are established, and then they are respected. So that gives certain sense of certainty and security to the people who are involved in this whole process. Then the next one is commercialization. Modern capitalism presupposes the commercialization of economic life. By commercialization, Weber means the appearance of paper representing shares in enterprise and rights to income. Typified by the emergence of the stock company, this development, he argues, has taken place only in the modern Western world. Yeah, an extreme form of commercialization where you can own the shares of a company. Okay, you can own the shares of a company, and this public issue of shares as that happens through the modern stock exchange. He says these are some of the extremely important enabling conditions. And then the separation of household and business, another very, very interesting point, which we have to be very critical in accepting in toto, because even now There are huge business conglomerates both within the country as well as outside, which is yet to make this kind of a distinction. Finally, modern capitalism also presupposes as a requisite for rational bookkeeping the separation of business from the household. This entails both a spatial separation between residence and work, and more importantly, a legal separation between the personal wealth of the business owner or his or her private assets and the corporate wealth of the business enterprise, the capital invested in or available to the firm. One is that there is a separation, physical separation. The earlier or even now, you know that in many houses, production takes place within houses, very small domestic level of houses. But when you look into the modern capitalist system, the place of work is completely different from the place of living. They are completely physically separate. And more than that, even though the private families could be owning a company or a corporate firm, or they might be the owners in the traditional sense, there is a separation of the personal wealth as well as the wealth of the company. And again, you know, this is a very complicated or not a very black and white scenario. We come across quite a lot of stories where this line is broken and people, you know, there's hardly any distinction exists between the corporate money and the personal money. And quite a lot of, if you look into some of the recent controversies involving some of the billionaires who had to flee the country, who had committed a lot of frauds and other crimes, you will this particular you know, point becomes very clear. So appearing only in the modern Western world, this constellation of conditions, Weber argues, enabled capitalist business enterprise to achieve a maximum of formal rationality. This quality, this rational organization and calculability is precisely what makes capitalism such a formidable economic system. So this is his argument. All these 6 or 7 points, all these points that we discussed so far came into existence with its full force only in the modern period, and that too only in Europe. That's what Weber argues. Again, being criticized heavily for its very strong Eurocentric position. But he is very categorical in arguing that this enabled a maximum of formal rationality. Okay, nothing to do with substantive rationality, nothing to do with values or lofty ideals or ideals or nothing of that sort. It's all about how do you do certain things, how instrumentally you do certain things, what are the procedural mechanisms. The emphasis is completely on the procedure, not on the inner meaning, not on the ideal, not on any of the principles. So this is precisely what makes capitalism such a formidable economic system. Other factors are also necessary, most importantly, a rational spirit, the rationalization of the conduct of life in general, and a rationalistic economic ethic. This is very interesting. You know, so far, all the points that we discussed, including free market, legal system, free labor, separation of household between from the other thing, and all the points that we discussed were all about the kind of structural conditions. They were all about the social factors, economic systems, economic arrangements. And here Weber is bringing in a very important point. He says that there has to be some kind of an attitudinal change, certain kind of a qualitative change in the way people think. There has to be a rational spirit, the rationalization of the conduct of life in general, and a rationalistic economic ethic. He's talking about how ethics, or how a certain kind of a spirit, or how a certain kind of an attitude is something so important for the emergence of capitalism. Thus, the formal rationality of capitalism has yet another presupposition. It requires the presence of a new type of person, the carrier or bearers of a rational ethic, and a new and a specifically methodical way of life. Weber takes up this side of the story in his very famous book, The Protestant Ethic and Spirit of Capitalism. And this is going to be a very fascinating argument. He's saying that along with all the structural requirements, you require a kind of orientation. You require a kind of attitude. You require a kind of certain kind of a proclivity, which certain set of ethos, certain set of ideals that provide some kind of a guidance to your everyday life. both your personal as well as your collective life. And in the absence of this set of ethos or this particular spirit, capitalism would not have emerged. And that's a very provocative argument. It is provocative because it is in direct conflict with a Marxian argument about economic change. Marx absolutely gave no importance to any of such kind of attitudinal changes or changes in values. He argued that all these things happen as a result of economic changes. Here, Weber is bringing in this importance of the spirit or a set of ideas or set of ethos or set of ethics as something so important for the emergence of capitalism. And this argument he brings forth in its complete majesty or complete beauty in his extremely popular work, his magnum opus, The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism. And this book will be the subject matter of our next class, an extremely important work by Weber. Okay, so let us just have a short recap, very brief recap. He is talking about the emergence of modern capitalism. He doesn't say that capitalism as an economic system was something quite unique to Europe or it emerged only during the modern times, but he says that it existed earlier, but he would very vehemently argue that the modern capitalism, okay, the modern capitalism, the rational capitalism is something quite unique to Western Europe, because that required a set of other structural conditions for its emergence, including all the points that we discussed, including private property, free labor, then existing legal systems, and a host of other science and technology, and a host of other points that we discussed. So Weber, towards the end of this discussion, is saying that it is not only that the structural factors are important, but also there has to be a change in the spirit, change in the ethic, change in the moral aspects that govern not only the individual but also the collective. And that is what we are going to discuss in the coming class in his work on this Protestant Ethic and Spirit of Capitalism. So let us stop here and see you for the next class. Thank you.